Hey YouTube, this is Olga, and today I wanted to spend a little time talking about the topic of forgiveness because I feel like forgiveness is one of those things that pretty much any single one of us has to go at some point. Like, I just feel like as a soul, it's one of those lessons that is just inevitable. And I know that, like, when something really messed up happens in your life, it's really hard to see it from a different perspective, and just it's really hard not to be in the victim mentality and wonder, like, why the hell is this happening to me? Like, why do I deserve this? But at the same time, like, I would say 99% of the time, years later, we look back at the situation and we're like, wow, like, if this hadn't happened to me, I wouldn't be who I am today. And it's just like most of the time, like, as messed up as it is, and I'm not saying it's not, of course, like, whatever happens is really hard for the psyche, for us, like, as a personality, as an individual, as a soul. It's really hard for us to process and learn from, because it's like, I guess, like, our ego was more focused on it being offensive to us and, like, mean, and, like, how it affected us in a negative way. But I think it's really, really important to learn from it and grow, because otherwise, I don't know if you've noticed, but most of the time, like, if something happens to you and you learn nothing from it, basically, like, you just kind of keep seeing it as something super negative and messed up in your life, then similar stuff keeps happening. Especially, like, it's very noticeable with relationships. It's almost like a cycle, like it's almost like this lesson that you haven't learned, so it keeps repeating over and over and over in your life until you learn it. And the same thing with forgiveness, basically. And I guess the main point I wanted to get across is that when it comes to forgiveness, it's really important to see whoever hurt you at that point not as an enemy, but more as a spiritual teacher, like a really mean, messed up spiritual teacher that you never wanted. But basically, that's like when you kind of shift that perspective. And of course, it's easier to do if it's nothing like that serious that happened to you. And if something, God forbid, like really, really, really bad happened, then of course it's going to take like a long, 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 long time to even consider that, which I totally, totally get. But I think that, like, the faster you can kind of like bounce back and be like, oh, okay, like, what did I learn from the situation? What has this person or whatever, what has that taught me? And how can I move on in my life with this knowledge now to help me become a better person? Because basically, at the end of the day, that's kind of what forgiveness is all about anyway. So again, like, it's not, how they say, like, you forgive, don't forget. You don't have to forget. Of course, you can remember. I mean, if for whatever reason, maybe it will be serving you in some way, or maybe it'll serve somebody else. But you have to kind of, you don't have to. I should correct myself there. You can choose to let it be more of a constructive force than a destructive force, if that makes sense. So I just thinking back to like a few of my own experiences with forgiveness. I've had quite a few, actually, but one of the main ones that was very, very, very hard for me to learn from, because I just had so much like pent up like negative emotion and sadness, and just this feeling of, like, why me? That was when the love of my life, somebody that I literally thought that, like, this is who I'm gonna spend the rest of my life with, this is who I'm gonna have children with, I don't want anybody else, I don't even want to look at anybody else, I am obsessed with this person. When that person totally betrayed me and cheated on me, and like, this is 3 years into the relationship, and already things were shaky. It's not like, I was perfect and he was like this evil person. No, it's just, that's really, like, we really weren't a good match, but I couldn't see that at the time because he was my first love, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate. Like when you're that emotionally invested in somebody and you feel like you have never loved anybody as much, it's really hard to see it from a clear perspective. You just basically have these like rose glasses, and you're just like, oh my God, like I don't care what happens, even if we fight, whatever, like I just love him so much and that's all that matters. But the reality of life and relationships is that no, that's not all that matters. There's like a lot of other shit that you have to consider, okay, for it to work out. So for me, it was very hard to kind of like let that go. And it literally, I mean, this is crazy to even say, but it took me like a decade to get over it, and I know it's kind of like insane, but again, this is somebody, like, you have to consider that I'm one of those like empathic people, and to me, when I feel something, I really feel it to the point of like it's really hard to describe because it's so deep. I'm so engulfed in these emotions, and it's just like everything to me. And anyway, so the point of this story is that I still at some point had to let it go, and it's just like there was a lot of stuff that, like, I mean, I can talk about the story for like hours. There's just so much stuff to like cover about it, but I wanted to focus specifically on forgiveness and how once I had accepted what had happened. And by the way, I want to mention that, like, if you are going through a really hard time in your life, if you like journaling, I think it's an amazing, amazing tool to help you get through stuff like this. Just because, like, when you actually write it down, especially if you're doing it by hand and you kind of like take the time to process it, it really helps you look at the situation kind of like from a side, especially when you come back to it later and read it and just notice, like, that's interesting that I mentioned that. Like, why would I even, does that really matter? Like, why is that so important that I even put it in my journal? And just kind of like analyzing it and seeing, like, what did you focus on at the time of this happening? And like, what was your perspective? Why did it touch you so much and like so negatively? So I just wanted to say that, like, when I'm glad that when I was going through that breakup, I journaled a lot, and I kind of recorded everything. Well, not everything, but like for the most part, I recorded what happened and how I felt at that time. And now going back and reading over it, which I would do like every now and then, like maybe every couple of years, just to see, like, do I still have the same emotions towards the situation, towards this person? How am I different now? Like, have I grown since then? Like, what's changed, And it's so much easier for me to see it now from a different perspective, just because I journaled it as someone who was like younger and so engulfed in these emotions. And now looking back, I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, it sucks. Like, objectively, that was a really hard experience, but at the same time, there's just no, like, I'm so glad that it actually happened. And in a way, I think it had to happen this way, specifically for me to like let it go once and for all, because we were kind of like, on and off, like for like probably a year before that, and something like really bad had to happen, like something drastic had to happen for me to just wake up and be like, I can't do this anymore. There's just no way. It's done. Like, I need to have some self-respect. Thank you very much. So and also, like, that makes me think of the quote, which I couldn't find the author on the internet, but it just said unknown. But the quote is that, and I'm sure you've heard it before, it said, if you love something, let it go, and if it comes back to you, it's yours forever. And if it doesn't, then it was never yours to begin with. So it's kind of a very good way to look at it, because, and a really hard way to look at it when you're so invested in making a relationship work, or a friendship. It could be anything. But it's true, because you can't, like, if you cling on to something, and you have to cling on for it to work out, even if it's like not really working out, but you're just desperately like trying to make something work. It's not worth it. Like, is it worth your energy? Is it worth your self-respect? Is it worth your time? Probably not. you know. And of course, I feel like most people realize it at some level, but they just so don't want to let it go. So that's why they keep it going for like way longer than it like should be going for. But again, as long as you can like learn and grow from it and become a better person, evolve, and become basically who you want to be as a result of this like difficult situation, that then I think it was all worth it. So like in terms of coming back to forgiveness again, it just made me realize about myself, like how much I can love, how deeply I can love, how I can like, what is betrayal like, what is my ability to forgive, what is my ability to move on from this situation, my ability to be more rational and not as emotional. And so all of these things combined, there's no other way but to make you a better person, because as a result of these experiences, you're going to be able to evaluate your new experiences from this standpoint, and you're not going to fall into the same traps basically if you have truly like processed it and let it go. Because the second you will kind of like see something similar, you'll be like, no, like I've been there, done that, got a t-shirt, thanks, I'm good, But if you haven't learned anything, as I said before, like you'll just keep on like re-experiencing the same crap, like just in a different whatever, like cover up. It's just basically the same shit happening all over again. So there's just no other way but to learn from it. And it also teaches you how powerful you are, how strong you are, how dedicated you are, what kind of a person you are, how forgiving you are. So forgiveness is going to teach you about your own inner strength and power as a human, as a soul, having this human experience. And it's something that can totally propel you forward, or something that can really hold you back in life. So of course, when you think of it that way, wouldn't you want to move forward instead of like being upset and just keep dwelling on something? And I feel like people who are watching this video are probably not the type of people who would be like dwelling on something forever. So it's more of like a reaffirmation that you are on the right path. I guess like finally, I just wanted to mention that, as messed up as it is, life just goes on, like you think a lot of the time, like when something terrible happens to you personally in your life, you're just like, how can the world just keep going? Like nothing has changed, you just go outside and you're like, well, people are doing their stuff, like everybody's going around about their business, and everything's like fine to them, like nobody cares. But it's just a matter of not being stuck in that position of like lacking power. That's how I think of it. Not like victimhood necessarily, but just you kind of giving up your power. And the bottom line is that, of course, we're not going to be able to choose like most of the experiences in life ourselves. Or maybe, I think of it from a point of view of a soul, that like we have most of the stuff like pre-planned. So it's a constant like co-creation in this world basically. But from a standpoint of a human, it feels like you have no choice, right? So like the situation is going to happen whether you want it or not as a human. Maybe as a soul you want it, but you don't know that as a human. So it's always kind of like a matter of perspective. It's always a matter of choice of how you interpret the situation. That's basically what like life coaching and counseling, psychology, like behavioral psychology is all about, or cognitive behavior, or CBT, because it's all about the prism through which you look at the world. Like, how do you interpret the situation? And like I remember, which like a totally random example, but I remember a few years back, my last laptop, all of a sudden completely like stopped working. The hard drive was like burned. It was just a crazy situation. And I had so many like pictures on it and so much stuff that I like really cherished and loved. And it's funny how I thought that like just in theory, if that had ever happened, I would be like, oh my God, no, like it would be so like heartbreaking that like all the stuff was gone, because I didn't, of course, back it up at that point, which I do now a lot more of, by the way. But see, like learning from experience, which I wish I didn't have to go through, of course. But you know, when it actually happened, it was kind of like weirdly freeing in a way. I just remember like driving somewhere and I was just thinking like, well, so what? Like it's just a whole bunch of stuff that's gone now. Like I'm still the same me, and like my life is still the same. But I mean, it sucks, but it's not like, it's really not that big of a deal if you think about it. You know, it sucks. That's all I can say. But and since then, I've rarely ever thought about it or like wondered like what types of like hundreds of pictures I just lost like as a result of this stupid experience, you know. But that's kind of like one of those, like simpler, just more annoying experiences. Like in this video, I was talking about something that's more like really heart wrenching and breaking, like just something that like really shakes you to your core. And regardless of what it is, unless you find some way, some power within yourself to help you move on, it's just gonna keep bringing you down. And that's not what it's about. I just feel like it's really about moving you forward. But you have to choose that. It always comes back to the person. You always have that choice. And it's just a matter of like whether you want to accept this choice or not. It's totally up to you. So I hope this video was helpful to whoever watched it, and I would love to hear your questions or comments below the video. And I'm just sending you love and health and good vibes, good energy, and I guess I'll see you soon. Have an awesome day or night. Bye.